Okay, so now we're looking at Unit 4 in Finance, and we're looking at Chapter 9 in the textbook. So we're looking at actual expenses in your future once you're out on your own. So 9.1 and 9.2 is looking at savings and investing. So we're still looking at our compound interest, but there are other things we need to consider. So when you want to save your money, you deposit it into an account in that financial institution. Your money will increase in value due to the interest rates, but you also incur service fees and possibly some transaction fees depending on the type of account you put it in. So you need to make sure that you understand what a service fee entails. A service fee is a charge for providing the service. It's charged monthly to the account, and it's sometimes a flat amount and sometimes it's the percent of the balance. A transaction is actual activity that occurs within the account. So that's your deposits, your withdrawals. Some accounts set restrictions on the number of transactions allowed or charge a fee per transaction. So example 1, Bill's Bank charges $5.95 for up to 10 transactions per month, plus 75 cents for each additional transaction. In November, he made 8 transactions. In December, he made 23 transactions. Determine the service charge deducted from Bill's account balance each month. All right, so I want you to pause the video and do your calculations. Okay, so as we can see, because November he only had 8 transactions, he only had to pay the $5.95. But in December, he had that $5.95 for his first 10, and then he had an extra 13 transactions to get up to a total of 23 that had to be times 0.75 to come to a total of $15.70. Okay, example 2. Calculate the balance in an account after 2,500 earns 2.3 interest compounded daily for 31 days, but incurring $6.95 in fees. Okay, so what you want to think about is you want to think about what order do you need to do your calculations. Okay, are we going to subtract the $6.95 first from the fees and then add the interest, or calculate the interest on the 2,500? Okay, so really what you want to think about is you're going to earn the interest on the whole 2,500. Then you're going to deduct your fees. So pause the video, do your calculation. Another thing to remember is that your 2,500 is your amount before interest. So this is your P, so you're going to do A equals. Okay, so knowing that our 2,500 is our principal, our amount that we start with, our present value, we're then going to put in the other values. So we have 0.023 for the interest. It's compounded daily to 365. And then the power, because it's only for 31 days, when we say 31 out of 365 days to find the number of years and then multiply by 365, the 365s cancel, and again we're only left with the 31 days as our NC. So when we plug that into the calculator, you should get 2504.89. Then don't forget that we need to subtract our $6.95 in fees. So we can see now when we subtract our $6.95, we end up having a balance of $2,497.94. So though we earned interest in those 31 days, we still have our $6.95 in fees. Okay, so we can see that we decreased by just over $2. Keep in mind, as the months go on, eventually you will still be gaining money. All right, so you can see that right now our interest is only $4.89. As we continue to earn interest on our interest, we will be gaining money rather than losing that $6.95. Okay? All right, so now let's continue on. What we need to remember is that all investments carry some level of risk. Generally, the greater the risk, the greater the return or loss. So a risk is the uncertainty or the likelihood that an investment will decrease in value. Mutual funds are investments where people pool their money together to buy stocks and bonds and other assets, and they're managed by an investment company charging a fee. A growth rate is the percent by which an investment increases or decreases in value over a given time, and the management fee is the percent charged by the investment company for managing your account. Therefore, the actual rate of interest earned is calculated by subtracting the management fee from the growth rate. So your I will actually be the difference between the two. Okay, so you always want to end up having your growth percentage be more than your management fee. Some key words that you guys are going to want to remember for your futures are RRSPs, which are Registered Retirement Savings Plans, and Registered Education Savings Plans, which are RESPs. The difference between the two are that an RRSP is an investment set up to provide income after retirement. Generally, you're allowed to put money in and claim a deduction from your tax return, and contributions accumulate interest tax-free. When the money is withdrawn, then it is taxed as income. So usually you are restricted from not withdrawing under certain circumstances, like buying your first home, but then you want to replace that value, and you won't be able to withdraw an RSP until you retire, usually after the age of 60 or 65, depending on what the age limit is. RESPs is an investment set up to save for a child's education. The income from that plan grows tax-free, and the federal government will usually contribute a percentage of your contributions as well to top it up. Usually you just need a social insurance number to top it up, and you can set up family or single plans. So it can either go to a specific child or to all the children set up in the family. So if your eldest decides not to go to post-secondary for an extra education, it can get passed on to the second child who may be planning to go into a university that perhaps costs more. Okay, so there's a variety of options, but the key thing is that it's starting early and saving for a post-secondary education, so when you go to college or university. And sometimes it can be also set up so that if a student decides not to go to college or university, that they can still withdraw the money because it was going towards their education. If they decide not to pursue an education, they still get the money. So you just have to be careful when you're setting them up as to what type you are setting up. And finally, we have a guaranteed investment certificate, which is a GIC, and that's an investment paying interest at a fixed rate and cannot be cashed before that specified date. So you can get GICs for 1 year or 2 years, and it's at a fixed interest rate, but you cannot touch that money until the specified date that you got it for. So we're going to look at a couple more examples. Find the future value of each investment. Assume each investment has a 1.5% management fee and that the interest is compounded annually. So A, $1,145 is in a fund with an annual return of negative 1.1% after 5 years. Okay, so that means that we're actually going to be decreasing in value. It's a decay rate rather than a growth rate. And then we have an additional 1.5% on that. This would be possibly a high risk one, and so that means that you're actually losing money, but you also may find that in the following 5 years that you get a much higher rate of return. Option B, $750 is in a fund that averages 14.15% growth per year over 5 years, and then the management fee of 1.5 will be subtracted from it. So I want you to pause the video, do the calculations, and then come back and check the work. Again, these are your present values, so the amount before interest, and you're calculating the future value, so you're calculating A. So A equals will be the formula that you use. Okay, so we can see that our P is 1145 from that original present value. Our interest rate is going to be the 1.1 plus the 1.5, okay? Because they're both negative, the management fee will actually be decreased, so we get 2.6% being lost. So negative 0.026, compounded annually for 5 years. Okay, so when we calculate it, it actually goes down in value, so we end up having lost over $140 down to $1,003.69. Okay, so now when with the 750, we have a growth of 14.15%, but we're losing 1.5% in a management fee. So our interest rate will only actually be 12.65%. So that's our I. Our present value is 750, compounded annually, for 5 years compounded annually, so 5 times 1. So when we calculate that, we end up getting a new amount with interest of $1,360.56. Okay, so what I want you to do now, I want you to work on the sheet 9.1, 9.2, and continue to use your formulas.